Our first trip to Iceland, I came over here with the founder of Yellow Dog, Jim Klug. We had heard about the incredible fishing in Iceland, but there really wasn't a whole lot of information about it out there. So Jim and I came over, and it was a little bit more of like an exploratory trip. We were here for about a month. We bounced around a lot, went up north, but I was immediately just kind of blown away by not only the fishing opportunities, but just Iceland in general. It's one of the most incredible landscapes I've ever personally seen. The people are fantastic. There's so much culture. It's easy to get around. And it really just kind of blew me away. And I immediately kind of knew that it was something special, and we were really excited to be able to offer it to our anglers moving forward. So super eye-opening trip. And as we came back and continued to develop the program, you know, immediately I could tell from this experience, it just keeps getting better and better. The experience 10 years ago was great, but when we got on board with Fish Partner and started working with them, I could immediately notice a very big difference just in regards to the diversity of offerings they have, their professionalism, and they always are continuing to, you know, grow in the right way and be able to offer more diverse experiences and world-class experiences to anglers looking to come over here and experience Iceland. You can tell it's continued to evolve. And Josh Mills, being able to tag along with him, you know, pick his brain, learn from him, see him out on the water and interacting with the guys at Fish Partner, it's been an incredible experience. And it's just, to me, it's that next level of progression for the Iceland program.
So we got to Iceland, landed in Keflavik, and then took the 30-minute drive over to the main city, Reykjavik. And the following day, we hopped in the transfer and headed about 3 hours north up to Long Valley Lodge. Met up with Christian and Sindri, and in classic fashion, Christian was ready to go, and he said, put your waders on, string up your rods, and let's go fishing. And we started our very first night and started fishing instantly, which is pretty common on most trips when you come to Iceland.
Josh and Fish Partner have done an incredible job of just continuing to develop the program and the offerings and the understanding for, our anglers at Yellow Dog. So when they do come over here, start exploring it, it is incredibly dialed in now, and we have a very good understanding of it. So for me personally, being able to come over and witness that firsthand and get a really good grasp on it just expands my knowledge to be able to talk to our anglers when they're exploring a bunch of different options kind of all over the world. We get a lot of anglers that really kind of compare and contrast different fisheries. So for me to be able to come over and experience this firsthand is incredibly helpful for me, that hopefully I can help demonstrate with our anglers when they're comparing different options. So secondly, it's to come over and check in with our friends at Fish Partner, learn what's new in their world and what they've been working on. They've expanded the program. They share I would say, a very similar mindset to Yellow Dog, that they're always kind of, looking for that next thing and pushing what's out there and available that they can offer to anglers. So first and foremost, that's been incredibly helpful for me and hopefully for our anglers that I'll be working with down the road.
Long Valley Lodge and the rivers in that system, you know, there was some glacier melt, maybe not the best for Blanda specific, but what's great about that is we were able to pivot to those tributaries that were running, you know, almost gin clear, and you know, our approach was, let's, you know, find some clear water, and moved up those tributaries, and our experience, you know, fishing some deeper runs, covering some water, and just kind of, you know, exploring and locating some of these fish. And I'd say one of the highlights was finding some of these really cool deep plunge pools that you see it and you're just, wow, that looks like something that would really hold a nice fish. And so it was pretty cool to see that, and also be shown, you know, from a little bit bigger water to some smaller water that was, again, you know, might be a little technical. There was sometimes, you know, we're crawling on our hands and knees, kind of peering over the bank, you know, weeding through the grass, just checking to see if there was active fish in there. So that was a really cool approach, and we had a really fun time doing that. Blanda Long Valley Lodge is really, you know, has the most diversity of all the offerings with that Fish Partner offers. These guys, you know, the three main species: Atlantic salmon, you've got native resident brown trout, and also char, and also some sea run trout as well. So you really have a unique area that focuses on all those species. And certain times of the year, you know, you could have a week or a few days where you might be able to get what they call the Icelandic slam and get all those species in one single system. So it does offer a variety. It's not all the time, but it is available and it could happen. Technical side of the Blanda, you know, system and the fishing there, you know, the lower sections, sea pool, beat one, even some stuff up a little bit higher. You know, if you're focusing on Atlantic salmon, it's primarily a two-handed game. It's not something that I would not say that you can't use a single hand rod, but a two-handed rod or spey rod is at your advantage. And then as you go up in, you know, further up the Blanda, start getting into single hand. A lot of times, you know, it's whether it be nymphing, certain water conditions are best, and also streamer fishing with a single hand rod up higher for some of the native brown trout. You know, there's really good options for streamers, you know, considering the season, but it's always something that you want to have in your quiver.
When you start looking at the Blanda or you start fishing it, each section of it to me is different and unique. As you start to move farther up into the kind of middle beats around where Long Valley is located, it feels a lot more kind of like a you know, larger freestone or even a small tailwater that you might find in the US West, where you have lots of islands, braids, back channels, riffles, lots of structure, but totally different from those lower sections that feel a lot more coastal. So you have those middle beats. Going even farther, you move upstream and you get even smaller water. You get canyon sections, you get smaller tributaries that flow down into the main stem of the Blanda. Small water that's really good for dry dropper fishing, smaller rods, still great Atlantic salmon fishing, but then world-class resident brown trout fishing on streamers and dries. So you could fish the Blanda watershed for an entire week and see different fishing scenarios every single day. So for anglers that are looking for a really diverse fishing experience, multiple species, and then a lot of different fishing scenarios, Long Valley Lodge is incredible. And that was something that I really took away from that program, is it's just so unique in the fact that it's a really diverse program and fishery.
First day here at the Battle Hill program, fishing wise, pretty cool. Met up with Jerome. He's one of the head guides here. His buddy Jacob, originally, guides in Sweden, here running the sea trout program. We were able to, fish minutes from here in our first pool, and so it was really fun, really exciting first day just to jump right into it.
Jerome knows the water, better than anybody, and immediately, had us into targeting these sea-run browns. Anybody that has fished for sea-run brown trout knows that they're an incredibly powerful fish, almost completely different from resident browns. So to be able to target those was something that I was incredibly excited about, and this is kind of the place to do it. So was amazing kind of right off the bat. Coming down south to Battle Hill, I was really looking forward to it, just because it's definitely an adventure. It was seeing something new, the southern coast, which is spectacular, but also going for these anadromous sea-run brown trout. I mean, it really is an adventurous trip. Sea-run fish and anadromous fish, it's never just a given. It's not like, resident trout that are kind of always there. It's really dependent on the runs and the tides and the timing. So you never know kind of what you're going to get. And I really enjoy that, just because every day is kind of different. It's a little bit more of a hunt. It's an adventure, and that's something that I personally have really enjoyed about this fishery, is just trying to figure it out and learning from the guides and from Josh, and really kind of working together to find and target these fish. It keeps it super interesting and really exciting.
That afternoon, we shifted to a lower section from some of where all the smaller rivers come together, and it's a massive, river system. You've got glacial water, and on that glacial water, you've got some clear water from some of those tributaries that flow in, and there's a fine line. So locating that line, those fish like to kind of hold underneath the glacier water and where the clear water meets. And right away, we're out there with Jacob and Jerome and Tom, and we're lined up. We got our two-handed spey rods, and we're swinging the run, and within minutes, Jerome hooks in just to an absolute monster. We had a really good time, with Jerome and Jacob. These guys are, grinding all summer. As a former guide, I get it. You're out there, you're working day to day, you're hardly getting any time to fish. And with Yellow Dog visiting Iceland and Fish Partner, these guys got a little bit of time to actually fish themselves, hooking into some of these sea trout and just, grinning ear to ear, swinging, just catching a little break before they go right back into it for the rest of their season. So it's really fun just to spend that time and see how excited they were. And man, they can fish. They are nonstop anglers and they don't quit.
So Fish Partner has done an incredible job of really building the Battle Hill program, and I'm sure a ton of work went into it of acquiring the leases to have access to so much diversity just within this area for sea run browns. I was really kind of blown away just with the variety they had of different fisheries and fishing scenarios for brown trout. I mean, one day you can be down on a larger coastal fishery, swinging big water with two-handed rods for sea run browns. The next day they completely switch it up and you're fishing small water to crystal clear pools with single-handed rods. The fishery right outside, the main door of Battle Hill Lodge is world-class and completely different from the other fisheries that the guides have access to. So I'm sure a lot goes behind the scenes that anglers aren't really aware of, but the diversity that they've been able to build just within this fishing program is unbelievable. You can mix it up every single day, even though you're kind of primarily focused on sea run browns. The fishing scenarios and the scenery, it changes every single day. And that's something that really kind of makes it unique and keeps the trip and the itinerary each day super interesting.
The Battle Hill program is something that works quite well with the rest of the programs, being that they're kind of in the shoulder season before the trout and char at Long Valley or the Highlands, and then those kind of taper off, and then you go into the fall season, which again is for the Battle Hill program, they have those migratory fish. Right here at the lodge, they actually have one of the rivers that does hold sea trout. It's you could probably even walk to one of the pools right from the lodge doors. It's a little bit smaller river, very cool. It's got cascading waterfalls, has a really neat kind of landscape. Visually, you get there and it's all green, and you see this big deep pool, and it's just mind blowing that you're steps away from some amazing fishing. So I run several different freshwater programs for Yellow Dog: New Zealand, Mongolia, Greenland. Iceland's very unique. Basically, you have the variety, and to me that is something that is such a cool offering. You could spend 5 days here and have multiple different species all in one trip. Some places, like the others, New Zealand, Greenland, are specific to one species. Here you have a lot to cover. You can cover, the sea trout to char to native brown trout, so it offers a little bit more. For me, it's a freshwater fishery, and it has a little bit of difference in the way that what I'm used to fishing. And I think the approach here, being that it's not classic Western trout streams, it's a little bit shorter season. The fish on average are a little bit bigger. It's like, again, nothing I've ever seen before, and what a really cool experience.
Josh and myself and all the other program directors at Yellow Dog we're constantly in touch with these lodge and outfitting partners all over the world, checking in with them, saying, you know, how's it going? What's new with the fishery? How are the runs doing? What new techniques are you guys using, you know, in these fisheries? You know, we really kind of build upon those relationships, and that's something that we've always done at Yellow Dog, just so we have that like direct link to, you know, the outfitters that are, you know, accessing these fisheries every single day. We learn so much, and, you know, always try to take away as much as we can from them that we can pass along to our anglers, just so they're as prepared as possible and know exactly what they're getting into, you know, anywhere in the world that they're traveling.
The weather here is something that, you know, you should be prepared for. You know, it's pretty far north, and things are constantly changing. You know, waders are a must, rain jacket in your pack at all times. You know, sunglasses. You know, wind is definitely a factor here. We're pretty close to the coast, and, you know, having the realistic expectation that, you know, it's not going to be dead calm and you're going to get the perfect cast. You have to be able to adapt to changing conditions, whether it be an hour, 20 minutes. It's constantly changing. It's never just one. You know, even though it's summer here, you know, temps are, you know, can be comfortable, and temps can also be where you're putting on maybe a third layer at times. Battle Hill equipment's, you know, single hand rods, 8 weights are, you know, for single hand. You want a good reel with a good drag system. Then kind of switching over, you know, the spey rods, you know, you want something in the 7 to 8 weight range. And for flies, largely, you know, you're fishing small patterns, some stuff, you know, rubber legs. Sometimes you might nymph some of the smaller canyon areas. Streamers would be, you know, some classic kind of, you know, sun ray shadows. That was one that would shine here. You know, bait fish, kind of flashy things like that for the Battle Hill.
Trips like these, I think, are incredibly valuable, not only for, you know, Yellow Dog and our team, but also our anglers. You know, as you can see, you know, we take a lot of time in coming over here and spending quality time with our partners and really trying to soak in as much information as we can so we can come back and give the best information possible, you know, to our anglers. We're constantly asking questions, getting, you know, dialed in with our lodge partners, like fish partners, seeing what's going on in their world. I really do think it benefits you know, our traveling anglers, just that we come over here regularly, check in, really kind of continue to develop our understanding of these programs and fisheries, just so we can bring back the most current, relevant information possible for anglers looking to come over and experience these places.
We're moving pretty fast, on these field reports or visitations, kind of bouncing around from lodge to lodge, and sometimes you get more time spent, at one lodge. And on, getting to the Highlands, we had kind of a quick turnaround. We really only had about one day to really kind of explore a little bit of everything, and that day ended up being pretty good. The Highlands is mostly a char fishery, and that's something that you have to understand coming here. Iceland's notorious for these big, beautiful brown trout, but the char are also something very special, in my personal opinion. And whether you're streamer fishing, dry fly fishing, you likely will nymph some fish too. Cool thing is some pools you kind of fish blind for them, and then certain pools where it's nice and calm and there's a little bit of current. And the fun part is you might get a couple casts on these fish, and it's not necessarily like, oh, they ate your fly after even the fourth cast or the first cast. It could take 20 casts, and you kind of start noticing their behavior, and they don't really spook. They really are kind of on alert, I would say, and kind of circling the pool, and you keep casting at them, but that's what keeps it exciting and fun. And once your guide kind of has that feeling, he's going to tell you that these fish shut down and probably move on to some fresh fish. It's not the whole river that's fishing, it's more spot dependent, so you bounce around a lot. You might hit a pool, and your guide may say, we're going to rush this and just see if there's any fish in there, and quickly move on to the next. And we squeezed in quite a few pools in different locations in a quick amount of time. It's pretty fun, just in the first morning session, just to kind of bounce around, get a couple fish in the net. And that day ended up being pretty good for just having a quick shot at a couple of the rivers, and overall very cool experience in the morning session. The differences between all, the Highlands to the other two options is, you have, logistically it's a little bit closer to Reykjavik. It's not, quite the drive. Long Valley's a little bit further. You have really just trout and char focus in the Highlands. Some spots it's a little diverse. You have trout and char sometimes in the same pool, and some areas you have, just brown trout. So there's a little less diversity there. I would say maybe for someone that's more of a novice angler, the Highlands is maybe something that's a little bit, probably a little bit, I don't want to say easier, but a little bit more attainable. And where Long Valley, you need a little bit more experience, not necessarily expert level, but you just definitely cover a lot more. Fishing wise, there's a little bit bigger water, and Highlands is a little bit more intimate. Focus here is, it's a fishing trip in Iceland, and outside of that, the guides also do a great job in kind of exploring some of the landscape in the Highlands. And you go around a turn, and all of a sudden your guide's going to show you this insanely beautiful gorge canyon with amazing waterfalls, and it's just like mind-blowing. And some of us, the Chris Patterson, the filmer, we've traveled quite a bit over the years, and just our short time here in the Highlands, we saw some stuff, and that kind of blew our minds.
What was amazing about this trip was that I've been to Iceland more than a dozen times. I've been here to ski and snowboard on the Northwest Fjords by boat, or with helicopters in the Troll Peninsula. I've filmed salmon fishing forever ago. Come here with my family. I was engaged to my wife here. I really felt like I had explored all of Iceland and seen pretty much everything. But what was kind of amazing on this trip was Jerome, and really all the fish partner guides showed us such a wild side of Iceland that I didn't know before. And I didn't expect that, I guess. But that's how Iceland is. It sort of sneaks up on you and wows you every time.
there's a lot to offer here outside of the fishing. I would suggest, building out, a fishing block, staying at one of the lodges, but also spending some time to just kind of cover the island. Take a drive, go see the South Coast, drive up north, spend a day in Reykjavik. There's numerous tours. The tourist culture here is absolutely amazing. There's so much to see and do. A lot of times with past travelers, they are extending their trip into a non-angling vacation. So they kind of combo the two, and they actually work really well because there is a lot to do outside of the fishing.
Honestly, I would recommend Iceland as a destination to anybody. I mean, it's incredibly unique. It's unbelievably beautiful. Very easy to get to, easy to get around. People are incredibly friendly, and it's an amazing culture. So I would honestly recommend Iceland to anyone to come and experience. From a fishing perspective, who I would really recommend Iceland to would be the angler that's kind of looking for that next step in that next progression. You kind of have your tried and true fisheries that are still incredible, such as the US West, Alaska, Patagonia. But for the angler that's really looking for that kind of next level progression with a little bit of familiarity with some of the species such as, brown trout and salmon, Iceland's kind of that next step. It's great for everybody, but I'd say that angler that's really kind of looking for that next step and what's the next thing from a trout and salmon freshwater perspective, Iceland fits in perfectly.